Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new Fallout 76 video. So today we are going to do the second part of the recently announced combat changes that are scheduled for September. A couple of days ago I went through the weapon changes in a video, and there was quite a lot in there. In fact, there was a huge amount in there. In general, pretty much everything is getting buffed. A couple of things are getting nerfs. The auto axe and the chainsaw spring to mind, but let's be honest, those are ridiculously OP anyway. So yeah, on the whole, it's a massive buff. But there's a whole load of other stuff. We've got a load of perks and stuff going on here, and a few other bits and pieces as well that we're going to dive into in just a moment. So yeah, I will make sure I link that previous video around somewhere up in this corner, so you can check it out if you would like to. Yeah, as I say, it's a bit of a long one, but there's a lot to go through, so what can you do, really? And that's also why we've broken it up into two parts. So before we dive into the nitty-gritty of the second half of this set of information, a couple of things I want to say. Firstly, a little reminder, this is all subject to change to some degree or other. The PTS is yet to open. It probably won't open before at least this coming Friday. So until that actually happens, this hasn't even gone through public testing yet. So this is the starting point. The other thing is a little bit more out in the weeds, and we're going to do a bit of speculation here, because the implications of this, the wider implications, are a curious thing at the moment. This is a massive power creep. It's not even a creep, it's a massive leap, really. Across the board, pretty much, everybody is about to have massive amounts more damage to put out. Which is, well, I mean, Fallout's not been challenging at any stage during its lifespan, and this is even further moving in the other direction from that. So, there's going to be no difficulty whatsoever to combat, except for maybe one tiny little area, which I won't play anyway. So, what are they going to do later on in the year and after this is the question. So we know the September update is focused on building and these changes, but they have said, the devs, that they're working on a platform to move forward into what is likely to be a new era of 76 updates and that sort of thing, a new era of content. So it'll be interesting to see how this actually pans out. Part of that is the raids, but part of it seems to be something new. So a couple of weeks ago, during the summer showcases, John Rush, who's creative director on 76, did say that the December update, which is the one after this one, is going to be the biggest, in air quotes, update that 76 has ever seen. Now that's a hell of a claim, given that that also includes things like Wastelanders. So I'm not going to say I don't believe it, but it's a bold claim. However, whether technically accurate or not, it is likely that it is going to be very, very large. So what might they be doing there? I emphasise might, because I don't know. There's a couple of things that seem possibilities. It'll be a year since the first raid was added in, and they have said they want to add more. It takes about a year to get content from the drawing board into the game. Usually that's about the development cycle for each update. So another raid is a possibility, but that's certainly not the biggest update Fallout has ever had. So I'm wondering whether or not we might be getting a new zone, a bit like Skyline Valley, but another map expansion maybe? Maybe? I don't know. And if they do, given that the player power level has grown rapidly over the last year with these updates, it's obviously geared towards the end game needing something that is particularly challenging, and there have been little snippets and hints about potentially bringing in more challenging late game content. So I'm wondering if we might get a new region or zone or something that is going to be quite large and potentially extremely dangerous. Maybe? I don't know. I'd like to see it. But yeah, let me know what you think. That's just a wild speculation on my part, reading from like little snippets of information that has been teased here and there. I'm curious to see what we're going to get there. We'll find out in October, which is likely to be when they'll actually start sharing information about this. Maybe late September. Anyway, my ramblings and sort of preamble now over with. Let's actually have a look at what's in this update. So, well, we've got a couple of bits here. Perks, for some weird reason, are in two separate sections here, so we're going to jump back a little bit in a second. We'll start with enemy adjustments and go from there. So, as I said, lots of weapons got buffed in this, or will be getting buffed in this update in September. Since many low-performing weapons have received significant damage increases, median player damage is now much higher. Yeah, we know. To account for this, we've adjusted the health and resistances of the following creatures. Note, creatures also have additional contrast in their resistances to better highlight strengths and weaknesses versus different damage types. So yeah, it's not just a straight up health buff, it's other things as well to these creatures. And here is a list. Turrets, hostile, not player ones. Super mutants, mole miners, enemies in power armor, protectrons, rad scorpions, robobrains, assaultrons, fog crawlers, hermit crab, sentry bot, deathclaw, super mutant behemoth, grafted monster, scorch beast, violet queen, storm goliath, ultrasight abomination, scorch beast queen, and ultrasight terror. So just quickly glancing over that, these are the more threatening versions of the everyday creatures. And of course there's the region bosses there as well with the scorch beast queen and the like. So yeah, that's interesting. There's some miscellaneous bits as well. Liberator lasers dealing energy damage instead of physical, which will affect players to some degree depending on where your armor resistances are, but it won't change what you're doing, I don't suppose much. Few Deathclaw attacks which dealt 200% damage now deal 150% damage, which kind of seems like a nerf. Why would you do that? Deathclaws are not scary anyway. Deathclaw move speed has been increased by 10%. That makes it slightly more intimidating. And combat behavior modified to be more aggressive and more melee focused. That makes sense. I do feel that it doesn't necessarily make them any more dangerous though. Like, Deathclaws haven't been scary really since Fallout 3. I'm saying New Vegas, but we don't count that. Most robots are now immune to bleed damage over time effects. Robots with organic components, such as robobrains, have been excluded from this. Okay, I kind of get it, but at the same time, what about like oil and coolant and things like that? They could leak that sort of thing, couldn't they? And that would kind of be a bleed, kind of. And they've adjusted the damage of the volatile mutation in daily ops, so it no longer ignores armor and deals similar damage to other explosions that affect players' health, rather than being a percentage of your max health. So that makes that less dangerous, in short. So, yeah. Another step in the direction of making the game easier. Anyway. Perk adjustments. There's a lot of perks in here, and fortunately this is the last round of major perk changes, and then after that these updates should be much smaller, or at least the combat-centric stuff should be a bit more focused. So, we've got some perk adjustments. Crackshot, Ground Pounder, Modern Renegade, and Stabilize are having their cone of fire reductions reduced. So they tighten up the accuracy of a gun, these perks, and they are getting a little nerf. But, a reminder from the previous video, just about every weapon is being made more accurate anyway with this update. So it's kind of bringing that into line. And it's a varying amounts here, you know, see different numbers as well. But basically, it's a small reduction in the effectiveness of those perks because the starting point has been moved as well. The Stabilizer's 4-star legendary mod is having its cone of fire reduction reduced as well. And the scope stability increase is being fixed. It's a bug fix, apparently. It was making scopes way more shaky, apparently, and not stabilizing them at all. From the look at that, it looks like now that will actually do what it's meant to do. So there we go. Right, on to perks proper. In this update, we are finishing our rebalancing of weapon perks, which include heavy, melee, thrown, and bow weapons. So, this is a massive overhaul to the way heavy guns work. So if you are a heavy gun user, which basically means most late game players, you will be wanting to pay attention to this. Heavy gunner perks are being replaced with perks that focus on spending ammo to gain bonuses, along with highly requested perk to decrease the spin-up time on weapons. Yeah, I think that sounds good to me. But spending ammo to gain bonuses basically means once you fire a few shots, your damage goes up, or fire rate, or whatever. But it means you have to fire a few shots first before you get the full benefit of the effect. A little bit like Furious used to work, but a little different as well. You know, Furious, you had to fire a number of consecutive shots in order to get the benefits of it. Back in the day before they changed it earlier this year. So melee perks are moving away from one-handed and two-handed designations, and instead these perks will lean into more general properties of melee weapons, such as bleed and power attacks. Not sure how I feel about that. Let's see what the actual perk changes are. And bow perks will be benefiting all thrown melee weapons as well as the bows, with new ways to take down groups of enemies. Okay, that sounds curious. Bows definitely need a rework. Yeah, outside of that, they're not really very fun, so definitely down for some improvements there. It's always seemed ironic to me that the studio that made Skyrim with its infamous stealth archer build and really quite decent bow mechanics, you know, they're maybe not aged as well as some out there, but it is still, it's iconic, then produced these bow mechanics, which are particularly disappointing. Also standardizing perks and mods that grant the ability to automatically revive. Perks with these effects are now going to bypass going into the down state and have a 100% chance to occur, but they'll have a cooldown and require the use of a healing item like a stim pack. So they will always occur so long as they're not on cooldown, in which case they won't occur. So, in addition, effects that apply buffs on other players you revive will apply to yourself when self-reviving. Okay. The order in which these effects can occur is fixed. So Scout Banner revival will happen first. If that doesn't happen, EMT perk might be next. And then if that doesn't happen, life-saving mod. And last of all, power armor reboot. So these things will kick in first, and power armor reboot will be the last thing to kick in. But it should still kick in. Bugs notwithstanding. I smell a bug coming with this. I don't know. Hopefully so the Bethesda and have sorted it. So, the specific changes. Are we sitting comfortably? Slugger is now going to do extra melee damage versus crippled enemies. So this is leaning into that limb damage thing that's been going on for a while. I still don't like very much. Slugger Expert is becoming Kneecapper, and it will have only a single rank, and it will cost 2 points, like many other things have been changed to. And you will deal 100% additional limb damage, so double damage to limbs, with blunt weapons. Interesting that it's blunt weapons. Slugger Master will become Heavy Hitter. It will cost 3 perks, and blunt melee weapons will deal 50% extra power attack damage. So yeah, making it a bit more specific use case. Going on to the former one-handed weapons, Gladiator will become Wound Salter, and you will do additional damage against bleeding enemies. To throw back to the last video, one of the changes that they've been making to bladed weapons in particular, and weapons that have similar mods on them, is that they are more likely to make enemies bleed, so thus triggering this particular perk. So it does synergize with something further up. Gladiator Expert will become Meat Mincer, even. Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. And it'll have 2 points cost and only a single rank, and bladed weapons will gain 20% extra swing speed. That feels like a little nerf, actually, on the whole, but in the grand scheme. Not a massive change. But those of us with melee builds are going to have to definitely rethink our loadouts, and heavy gunners too, to be fair. So Gladiator Master is becoming Bloodluster for 3 perk points. You'll get a single rank that gives your bleed effects 35% more damage and 25% less duration, which means more damage in less time. And with Iron Fist, that's staying with the same name, fist weapons will deal damage based on your damage resistance. So the more armor you've got on, the more damage you can do with power fists and the like, which should be also relevant to those who want to be a punching power armor fellow. Because, yeah, massively high resistances from power armor, and they're punching weapons, so the fists of a suit of power armor. So that should be interesting. It opens up an option, potentially, that was logically should exist, but was somewhat iffy in the past. Okay, so we're getting into the heavy gunner stuff now, and this is where it's going to get a little complicated and a lot different. So, heavy gunner will be Drum Corps, and it will be a 3-rank perk. Perk 1, you'll gain a stack of Bullet Storm for every 50 ammo spent, up to 10 stacks. Okay. Each stack increases damage by 3%, and it resets when you reload or change weapons, but not when you stop firing, just when you reload or change weapons. Rank 2 gives you 6% damage per stack of Bullet Storm, and rank 3 is 9% damage boost. So it really is making heavy guns a big boss slaying emphasis, or if you want to go down these perks, because those are the ones that soak up enough ammo to really benefit from that. It also, from the sound of things, means you can switch enemies without losing the buffs. It's just as long as you don't switch weapons. Note on Bulletstorm, the perk Drum Corps grants the ability to gain a stacking buff based on ammo spent. This buff increases the damage you deal, and other perks can add additional effects. You can have up to 10 stacks of Bulletstorm, and they last until you change weapons or reload. So yeah, you will want to focus on maximum ammo capacity stuff if you want to go down this road as well to get the most out of it for the longest period of time. But yeah, it's very much making those heavy guns a boss-centric thing rather than being a use it in your general loadout type deal, which is a mixed blessing. I think most people lead that way anyway, but I mean, there's a lot of emphasis on doing that anyway. But this kind of really doubles down that you kind of have to. Basically means you're going to need 2 loadouts, I think. Or spend a lot of time farming things. Still, heavy guns are that powerful that it kind of doesn't matter if you don't get the full benefit against weaker enemies anyway, because they're that much weaker. Anyway, Heavy Gunner Expert will become tightly wound. It'll cost 2 points and have a single rank, and it will reduce the weapon's spin-up time, which will be a most welcome thing for minigunners and Gatling lasers. I'm kind of tempted to move back to my Gatling laser. It wasn't the most effective weapon in the world, and I don't think it will be now either, although I think it has received a small boost in the last year, but it was fun. It was just cool, you know? And you know what they say about the rule of cool. So Heavy Gunner Master is now becoming Bringing the Big Guns. 3-point cost, similar to above, and your bullet storm stack limit is doubled. So up to a maximum stack of 20 instead of 10. Therefore pushing you up to maximum of 9% damage. So that'd be 90, so that's 180% damage at top end. That's a big old buff. So your heavy guns will be able to rip, which should be interesting. Also begs the question of what is coming down the road regarding our little monologue before. Lock and Load is becoming a 2-point perk with a single rank, and keep half your bullet storm stacks when you reload, so half of it will carry over. That's going to be something people want. Each stack increases reload speed by 1%. So if you've got maxed out at 20, you'll get a 20% reload speed increase, which is not an offensive thing to have. Bare Arms, which is currently towards weapon weight for heavy guns. Each stack of Bullet Storm increases your bash damage now. Bash damage getting massive boosts, as we saw further up in this patch. But, yeah, I mean, it's almost usable at this point. You're still better off just shooting your foe, but still. I'd still like to see it more geared towards stagging enemies so you can then whip the gun around and take them down, but that's just me. I think it'll be a bit more fun and a little bit more John Wick. Pain Train. Improved hit detection and limited hit rate. Okay, not sure what to make of limited hit rate. It means if you run at a crowd of enemies, you won't be able to use Pain Train on all of them, which is a bit of a nerf. Although it registering the hits is not a bad thing. Counts as a fist weapon is interesting, because it means Iron Fist will be usable with it, which will presumably buff your damage output. Where was it? Yeah, damage based on damage rating. Yeah, you put those two together on a power armor build. Increased base damage and damage per rank, and it uses 5 action points per hit. So it's more damaging than it was, but it will do it to less enemies and at a greater cost. I don't know that that's necessarily a great set of changes. It's never been like the thing you build around Pain Train, though, and it still won't be here. It's more like if you just happen to be moving around, you take advantage of knocking things back. And it's particularly good if you've got, what's that daily ops mutation where you have to finish them off with melee damage, because you can just run into them. Especially with this, you will be able to. And then take them out using the melee damage from Pain Train, which, if you're a heavy gunner, trying to bash is doable, but it's slow. And their health will start to climb back up. It won't be such an issue anymore, actually, with this patch, but you did find that, you know, sometimes they'd heal a little bit and then not get taken out. So, yeah, this will actually offset some of that issue as well, which is interesting. Okay, so, Bow Before Me is being a 2-rank card. I think it used to be 3 ranks. And 20% armor penetration, 5% stagger on bows or thrown melee, and it goes up to 40% and 10% on rank 2. The Archer perk is becoming Hat Trick. It will be 3 ranks, and arrows and thrown melee weapons bounce towards additional targets, dealing 80% damage. So you can hit a second target, interestingly, in a kind of deflection type ricochet deal. Interestingly, it's got 3 ranks and they all say the same thing. Oh, I see. It increases the number of targets it bounce to. Rank 1, it will hit 1 extra target. Rank 2 will hit 2 extra targets. And rank 3 will hit 3 extra targets, dealing 80% damage. Okay, so your bows will do area damage, almost. Sort of. It's reduced 20% each bounce. And bounce range is based on the weapon's range. Oh, interesting. So, does that mean it subsequently bounces? So if it bounces from 1 and then hits a second target, it'll do 80% there, and then bounce again and do 20% on the next target. But only one at a time. I don't know, this is not very clear. Yeah, that's weird. That needs to be better explained, I think. Archer Expert is being changed to Deal Sealer. 2 points of cost and rank and a single rank, and you'll deal 10% damage for each impairment your target has. This being crippled, bleeding, burned, poisoned, and so on and so forth. Status effects, basically. Info shown in the Pip-Boy Effects tab. Kind of. Okay. That doesn't seem that useful, I've got to be honest. There's a 10% buff if you don't kill them with your first arrow, but your arrow is likely to do a single type of damage, so only a 10%. I don't see it going up more than that unless you're switching bows on the fly a lot, which is not going to be particularly fun. Might be a bit more useful if it works for thrown weapons, maybe, but I'm not so sure about that either on reflection. It could be made to be interesting, but I don't think they will. Archer Master is a 3-point cost, and arrow and thrown weapons pierce targets, so they go through and hit things behind them. Interesting, if there is anything behind them. Not sure how I feel about those. The hat trick thing does have a chance to be interesting, doing area damage, but the rest of it's not particularly exciting. I suspect we'll see subsequent changes to some of this on down the line. Fire in the hole is becoming strong arm, which is going to be confusing. Thrown weapons fly further, and that's going to a single rank instead of multiple ranks. But the throwing arc effect has been moved to the settings menu. Oh, that's interesting. So if you want a grenade throwing arc or a thrown weapon throwing arc, you'll be able to turn it on in the settings menu and have it without having to use a perk to get it. So the question then becomes, do you care about how far your thrown weapons go or not? So this probably won't get much use, I don't suppose. Because, yeah, you can just aim higher for the most part, and most thrown weapons, if they're outside of that base range anyway, you probably aren't trying to throw them that far, generally speaking. So, yeah, I can't see this getting used a lot. I think the fact that they're moving the arc to the settings menu is probably the most relevant point of that particular perk change. Homebody, single rank now, and improves the benefits of being well rested instead of food and drink depleting slower in a camp. So it's a bit more usable. Well rested grants extra agility, kindred spirit grants extra perception, and lover's embrace grants extra charisma. Okay. Again, not going to be a big priority. Still isn't anyway, so, you know, it is what it is. EMT will now cost 2 points, have a single rank, and automatically revive a down teammate once every 3 minutes, that's slow, and grant them increased healing for 1 minute. Both players need to be in the same area or interior and within a reasonable distance. So I don't know what reasonable distance is, but it's probably 100 feet or something like that, I would guess. We'll see how this pans out. I would expect to see these numbers changed. It feels like something that would get changed, or fine-tuned. We're getting there. We can see the bottom of the list. Injector. Players you revive have extra action point regen. Oh, that's nice. Revenant. Players you revive have an extra damage for 2 minutes. 25% extra damage for 2 minutes is quite a big deal, actually. That's quite significant. Again, it's very much a group-centric perk, and you'll either use it or you won't. But I think it's going to be a very much hot or cold kind of a perk for people, that one. Healing Hands. Players you revive are fully healed. Okay, I'm not quite sure what the current setup with because I don't do the whole group play thing. So, yeah, those of you who do will probably be having thoughts about this right about now, I should imagine. Rad Sponge. Again, something I don't massively use because I play as a ghoul. Absorb 10% of rads taken and restore hunger and thirst. Yeah, exactly. I don't have hunger and thirst as a ghoul. So, absorb 10% of rads taken to restore hunger and thirst, or 20 or 30% to restore hunger and thirst. Okay. Ninja. Rank 1 and 2, and I think it's currently a 3-rank perk, so there's a change. Rank 1 will have 50% sneak attack damage with melee and bows, specifically a use case, which is, again, why it doesn't get a lot of use, because sneaking with melee is a bit of a nightmare. You have to get right up on things, and stealth in Fallout is not very good, or in 76 in particular, it's not. But with bows, it'll be useful. And 100% at rank 2, so yeah, if you want to be a stealth archer, you'll want to be a ninja, apparently. Which, yeah, kind of does track, actually. Extending this perk to bows and thrown weapons. Yeah, okay. Psychopath. Rank 1, 3 ranks, okay. Hits outside of VATS restore your critical meter. Ooh. 5% contribution, 10% or 15%. Now that got a bit more interesting. Although there is a big hanging question over this. Hits outside of VATS refill your critical meter. So right now, if you don't use VATS, you don't get criticals. That's just the way it is. I still prefer to not use VATS. I land more shots that way, frankly. And it just feels better to me. Mouse, keyboard, PC player. But that has always rankled a little bit, that you're losing out on the opportunity to do crits. The fact this will now fill up your meter is really cool, and I like that. I think that's a good change. However, here's the million-dollar question. How do I deliver the crit? Do I still have to go into VATS to do that critical? Just less of a problem, because, yeah, that wouldn't be so bothering of me, just to do it quickly for that one hit here and there. But I think an external to VATS method to deliver a crit would be nice. Maybe it always triggers when it's full, when the menu, the bar's full, or something like that, or there's a separate key to trigger it. I don't know. But it would be nice to not have to use VATS for it. Still, this is at least one large stride in the right direction. That's cool to see. Grim Reaper's Sprint is going to be a 2-point card with a single rank again, and you'll gain 10% action point regen. For some reason, I'm having a hard time saying that today. Per kill while on a kill streak. Okay. Bloody Mess. This is interesting because this has been pretty much an arbitrary card thus far, given that it gives you a damage amount increase. Bleeding enemies you kill have a chance to explode based on your luck. Bleeding enemies you kill have a chance to explode for more damage, and have a chance to explode for even more damage based on luck at 3 ranks. Added damage to the gore explosion that scales with each rank and player level. Explosion does not damage you. Increased chance to proc with chance increasing with luck. Bloody Mess has a small chance to proc without the perk based on luck. So, it's no longer doing a flat 5% damage increase, I think? I think it was 5. So you're no longer getting the flat damage increase, but if you've got it, enemies have a chance to explode if they're bleeding. But if they're not bleeding, this perk just became useless, I think. Yeah, if you're not inflicting bleeding damage on enemies, Bloody Mess just got useless. That's disappointing, because it was always a fun thing to have, because it had a little bit of extra damage, so for every build, this silly perk was a utilitarian thing for everybody. Now, it's very, very limited to a specific use case. That's a bad change, in my view. I think that's probably the worst change I've seen in this patch so far. I don't like this either, actually. This is going to give it a run for its money. Power Armor Reboot. Automatically revives using a stim pack while in Power Armor. Cooldown at 10 minutes, 8 minutes, 6 minutes, 2 minutes. Random chance was removed and cooldown added. Cooldown is way too long there. Which makes this perk, especially at lower ranks, more or less worthless. I mean, yeah, it'll trigger, but I mean, at 4 ranks, it's just about usable. It's a legendary perk, incidentally, this one. So you will get it down, probably, if you're going to use it to 2 minutes anyway. And Hack and Slash, melee attacks deal 20% of their damage in a small area around you. Yeah, that's just tweaking it to be a bit more generalised. And actually, somewhat more useful. So there we go. Mostly quite cool. A lot of significant changes to the way heavy guns are going to work, in particular. And some really dodgy changes on the end there that don't look so great. So, we're into little bits and pieces that we'll be able to blast through now, which is just as well because I've just seen the time. Legendary mods. Life savings getting adjusted. A chance to auto-revive is increased to 100%, but with a 5-minute cooldown that is reduced by 1 minute per additional piece. So, yeah, as it is, previously it was a 50% chance to auto-revive when you go down. Now, it'll always do it, but only once every 5 minutes. But that takes it down to 1 minute if you've got 5 pieces on, so that's cool. Lucky is renamed to Lucky Hit. That doesn't make much difference, it's just a visual thing. So Rejuvenators is getting some changes. I'm not quite sure I fully understand what's going on here, because I don't understand the way the perk, or legendary mod rather, works at the moment, because I don't use it. If this is something that affects you, this will probably make a bit more sense to you, so you might want to pause it and have a look. But it now adds HP and AP regen to the Hunger and Thirst abilities. I don't know what those actually are, so yeah. You'll have some context that I'm not getting from this, if this is a thing that you use. Choo-choos. This effect has been overhauled to use the Pain Train perk, and each item equipped with this mod now gives you an extra rank to Pain Train. This can go beyond the max rank of 3 and works even if you do not have the perk equipped. It also adds an on-hit bleed effect to Pain Train that scales with more choo-choo mods equipped. So this is a Power Armor legendary effect, which is somewhat actually useful. Yeah, so with no rank to Pain Train, you can get up to 5 ranks of Pain Train And then your starting point becomes up to 3, I think, if you've got the Pain Train perk on. So, yeah, it makes Pain Train more and more effective. So it's actually considerably more viable, and I still don't think you'd make a build around it, but it is a useful supplement to another build, potentially, or to the rest of your build when you're using power armor. Workbench. So we've got a visual UI overhaul here for the weapons workbench. The categories will be renamed for better sorting, supposedly. So there's some debate as to whether or not that is actually better, but you know, that's always the way when it comes to organizational schemes. Consumables. Steeped Ashro's tea is getting its duration increased to an hour. I don't know off the top of my head what that does, but that actually makes it a less onerous prospect to use if you're into that. Gameplay. Floating damage number now have a random offset. Damage over time effects now display floating damage numbers. I see, so they're not focused so much in one small area. Should make them a bit easier to read, I think. And more visually interesting. I don't use it anyway because I find that the damage numbers flashing up in your face kind of annoying, but anyway. For those who do. Weapon changes. Unarmed tag renamed to fist. That does make a certain amount more sense, yeah, given the way that everything on that works. It's usually weapon related. Fist weapons now include either the blunt or sharp tags. Okay, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Power fist versus Mole Miner Gauntlet, for example. Automatic melee has been renamed to Power Tool and clarified the cursed description. That's not such a bad thing either. Fishing. Inspecting fish now shows how many of them you've caught. That'll be a nice addition come September. The stat is unfortunately not retroactive and will only count from the patch forward. Yeah, because the number isn't being saved beforehand, so there's nothing to get hold of for the visual part. Yeah, that does make sense. And I know we'd love it to be retroactive, but the game is not saving those numbers as it is, so it can't be done. Menu. Help entries have now been sorted off alphabetically in all languages, and the help menu entry for impairments has been added. So, last major overhaul to damage. Some of it is quite cool. I think the change to the way heavy guns work is interesting, is particularly making them boss-centric and not your general main driver, as it were. Which is interesting. I know not everybody's going to be over the moon about that, but it is what it is. Yeah, I think the supposed mystery big update that is coming in December, which this is laying the groundwork for, or they're hinting heavily that that's what's going on, is likely to be some very, very significant, large-scale, probably challenging endgame content, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a new region coming with that. You know, the sort of thing where if you go in here when you're not ready, you're going to get done over. But we'll see how that actually goes. That's my guess. Not a fan of the bloody mess change. Not a fan of a couple of bits and pieces in there. Some of it, on the other hand, is pretty good. But the general power creep thing, I don't like. It'll hang in a lot of ways on the December update as to whether or not they're actually going to put some content in there that makes that less stupid. It's the only word I've got. It's like, you know, this idea of a power fantasy is dumb as shit, in my view. It's weak sauce. I don't like it at all. Challenge, that's what you want. Challenge to overcome. It's far more interesting to me than this business of just kind of mowing through things as if it's not even there. You know, nobody mows the lawn for fun. Anyway, before I go on a big old rant about that, well done if you made it this far. Another long one, not quite as long as the last one. As a reminder, I will link that video up in the corner, and you can check out the details of the actual weapon changes, which will kind of add a little bit of extra context to some of this as well, if you haven't seen that one. Yeah, big changes coming, so we'll see how this goes come September. Obviously, PTS isn't open yet. My hunch for that will be Friday, but Bethesda have yet to say, so we'll see. And we'll see what reactions that starts to get and what changes between now and September as well, because there'll definitely be a few bits here that get minor adjustments along the road, which after all is the point of their server, isn't it? So yeah, hope you guys found that useful and informative. If you did, please consider dropping subs and likes. I very, very much appreciate it. We'll keep you up to date with all the Fallout news. Down below, I've got social media links if you want to keep those updates actually reliable. And channel memberships on the blue join button if you'd like to support the channel. I really, really appreciate it. If you get a chance to join us for live streams as well, we are, of course, playing 76 and some other bits and pieces as well, which have been good fun outside of the 76 space. Yeah, join us for that around about 8 o'clock on a weekday evening UK time if you are interested. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.